the more we understand and make our minds, expand our minds to take in this reverence-worthy nature, the better we'll be.
Beneath the mild-mannered exterior of philosopher and novelist Rebecca Goldstein lies a thorough thinker and extremely enjoyable raconteur with whom to chew the fat.
This is terribly honest, and I can't believe I'm actually saying
I'm
this.
appreciating the candor.
Tonight, I'm cooking a somewhat conflicting meal for the astute author. This is Last Meal, where I prepare the dish my guest would want if it were their last.
For anyone at home who doesn't know who you are, would you mind giving yourself a brief introduction?
So, my name is Rebecca Newberger Goldstein, which is a mouthful, and I'm trained as a philosopher. I spent most of my life as a professor of philosophy. It sounds so strange to call oneself a philosopher, right? It sounds like a term of praise or something, but I teach philosophy and I write books. I write philosophical books, but I also write fiction because I've always been looking for ways to make philosophy extremely accessible because I think it's really great stuff.
I guess before we get started, I should reveal your last meal. Rebecca, your last meal is
Oh my gosh,
lamb.
that looks amazingly good.
Your last meal is unique in a particular way, which is that while it's your last meal, you would also only have it if it were your last meal. Can you explain why
Well,
that is?
even then, I may not have it. Only if it would be everybody's last meal, if it would be the apocalypse, it would be the end of the world. I don't really eat meat, but what particularly bothers me is that I don't eat lamb because I love lamb. I love lamb. But if the world were ending and the lambs were all going to die, if they were already going to die, I would.
Do you think there's a difference between eating cute animals versus non-cute animals?
Makes absolutely no moral sense whatsoever.
It's just what's in your heart.
That's what I feel. It's what I feel, yes.
The more perceptive viewers would have seen that your last meal didn't just comprise of lamb, but there was also fruit.
Yes.
Can you sort of explain why that was part of the last meal and what it means to you?
Yes. Yes, so I do think, what I would want for my last meal is the most scrumptious, perfect fruit. And fruit can be so good, but it's also, I love this earth. I love this earth. And I love our home that we share, this planet. And so I would want to go out, I guess, paying homage to my good fortune that I was born at all. I feel like we should all, no matter how shitty our lives are, should be grateful that we were born at all.
Yeah. Do you think you're lucky to be born? It's an interesting comment because it's almost like that fear of missing out, but you're not going to be the one like missing out on anything because you don't exist.
Yeah.
But by dint of that sort of like feeling lucky to be born.
Yeah.
It's like versus what? Like not being born.
Like not being born. Yeah. Wish I feel bad for the people who weren't born.
But that's right. You want people.
Exactly. But I do feel bad. I think we all feel bad for people who die young. It's like, well, they're missing out on so much of life. And even if life is unpleasant, and it so often is, it seems to me still a good thing to be alive. Yeah, to have sampled this earth. Yeah, and that's why fruit just appeals to me so much. I think it will make me feel, I don't know, will it reconcile me to dying? I don't know. I'll think, no, I want to stay here. I want to eat more fruit. I'm not ready.
I want to stay here and eat more fruit. Said no one on their deathbed. I can say that right now. Yeah, well, that brings me to another question is, do you think you will ever be ready to cease to exist?
Maybe. I mean, the way I see life now, I feel no, never, But, I suppose, things could get so awful for me personally or, physically or emotionally or something that I would think, yeah, I'm ready. But it's just hard for me, having lived this life up until now, to imagine that. Yeah.
You never know how you're going to respond in various situations.
Exactly.
That's one thing that I've learned.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
There was a fantastic comic I saw last year. I was in Austin. He was just a support comic, but he was brilliant. And he had this bit about, when, I don't know if you like comedy, but sometimes bits just stick with you.
Yeah.
And he had this bit where he was talking about, he was getting on a plane. So it was a plane bit. And he's he goes to sit in the exit row because that's where his seat is. And the flight attendant comes up to him and she says, well, just need to confirm, I need a verbal commit that, in a case of emergency, you're going to help everyone out on the plane.
Yeah.
And he said, I can't say that I will. Because he's like, look, I mean, obviously I want to tell you yes because I want to sit here. But he's like, look, if this plane starts going down, I don't know how I'm going to react. Maybe I'll just elbow some old lady in the face. Who knows?
Yeah, yeah.
And it was a funny bit, but
Yeah.
it was such an astute observation.
Yes.
Like, who thinks about their life like that? Like that, everybody thinks they know how they're going to be or what they're going to do or what they're going to think or what they're going to say.
Yeah.
Nobody does.
Yeah. It's so true. Actually, and also, projecting back into history, and it's like whenever you're teaching about slavery in this country or something, and all the students, oh yes, I would have been an abolitionist and I would, no, you don't know.
Yeah.
You don't know how you would have behaved.
And that's a great lesson as well, to look back on exactly how human beings that are not too different from you behaved just 50 or 60 years ago.
Exactly.
You come from a family of Orthodox Jews who are quite disciplined when it comes to diet.
Yes.
And you're disciplined when it comes to diet, but for completely different reasons. And I guess it's because you have this sort of practical relationship with ethics and morality. Do you think there's a link there?
Unlike a lot of formerly Orthodox Jews whom I know, I had no trouble, I had no feelings of disgust towards pigs or shellfish. I love shellfish. And when I stopped being Orthodox and stopped being kosher, I had a really good time tasting all the things that I had been deprived of, lobster. But it's true. I'm very used to thinking about what's the right thing to do. And I think actually when I left Orthodoxy, which gives you just a script, how to live from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep. It's very, very strict and so many laws governing everything, food and sex and everything.
What do you think about the difference between rigid moral frameworks versus, I guess, what I could assume you and I both live in, the world of there being a constant evolving conversation about ethics?
Yes. I don't feel obligated now anymore to always get up to give an old lady seats because now I'm the old lady.
I didn't see that coming. I thought you were going to slag off old ladies.
No,
I was like, this will be good.
Yeah. I go across the line. I don't have to be the first one to pop up.
Yeah.
So,
in a world where we are sort of, I guess, the arbitrary, like we decide our own morals and ethics, or at least it's a flexible fabric that we all contribute to that topography. Do you think it's important for us to have guardrails on the sides of that to an extent? And if so, who decides on where those rails go?
I don't know. To me, the fundamental moral rule is that everybody matters equally. That is, as we feel our own mattering, the mattering of those whom we love very keenly. When you actually figure it out, when you think about it, something special about oneself or the people one loves. I mean, they're special to you, but objectively speaking. So, it's that circle of mattering to expand, certainly to take in all human beings, and other creatures too. Yeah. I guess I am now, having been no longer in the slightest bit religious. I am a humanist. I'm a secular humanist, which is sometimes mistakenly thought of as making people objects of worship. No, just objects of mattering. They matter. And it doesn't exclude the claim that other things matter as well. Many, many creatures matter. Sentient creatures matter. All sorts of things matter. And to the extent that I matter, everybody does. No more, no less. I think if the world lived according to that, really, really did, that would be very good. And I think that's the guardrail. That's the guardrail. Anytime there's an ideology that's making a difference, this group matters more, blah, blah, blah. No.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Hampy.
When you say humanists are often accused of, I guess what you meant, well, I'm asking if you meant that they laud other people like gods. Is that what you mean in a way? Or
yeah, I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but a prominent writer who attacked humanism and said, that's in the place of God, humanists put people, and people to the extent that, it doesn't matter about other creatures. It doesn't matter, it's people matter so much more. Everything can be sacrificed. No, just draw the boundaries of who matters. So it certainly contains all human beings, but a whole lot more too,
And that sounds a lot like Spinoza's God nature idea.
I came to philosophy by way of science. Particularly physics. And the way I came to Spinoza was Albert Einstein, who is a physicist who obviously anybody who loves physics tends to love Einstein.
Even people who don't.
Even though he was such a lovable, guy.
I think he's probably out of all of the physicists, at least, or even scientists, he's the person most likely to be on a poster in a hipster's house.
Yes, That's true. Especially that stupid picture of him sticking out. Exactly. Exactly. And he didn't take himself so seriously, and so, so many people who ought not to take themselves quite so seriously, take themselves so seriously. And here is this person, right? Yeah. Such a lesson, I mean, that's one of the reasons he's so absolutely lovable. But he was an incredibly moral man. When he came to this country, he was so exercised by the racism of this country. He was so shocked by it. He advocated for gay rights, women's rights. For a little old man, he was quite a radical. But he loved Spinoza. And so I was very curious. And Spinoza wrote this magnificent book called The Ethics. And it's the first attempt in the modern age to try to derive ethics from completely secular grounds. The ancient Greeks sat down it, but then religion took over and morality was conflated with religiosity. And Spinoza, he went back to the ancient Greek project. And he does talk about God an awful lot. But his notion of God is so different from the transcendent God who mixes into the course of history and produces miracles and has his favorites and all of that sort of thing. This kind of personal God. No, and he identifies it with nature, but again, it's not nature as we usually think of it. And in the way I've been talking about the little lambs and the beautiful fruit and running rivers, it's the laws of nature. It's what the Spinoza's notion of Deus sive natura, the thing that can be thought of as God or as nature, is, I'd argue, exactly what physicists are talking about when they talk about the final theory of everything, the final theory which will give us the final laws of nature in their simplest, most elegant form, and will explain why these have to be the laws of nature. Spinoza thinks we can never know it, but it is the aim of physics. It is the aim of science to know it. For Spinoza, to do physics is to know God. I think that's very beautiful.
And I guess it also kind of determines, I guess, ironically, the fact that he wouldn't believe that free will existed if everything...
Exactly. Everything is so deterministic.
Yeah, preordained. And do you share that?
Yeah, I do. And yet, there's room for the moral life. And in fact, the more we understand and make our minds, expand our minds to take in this reverence-worthy nature, the better we'll be. The less we'll favor ourselves. I mean, that's always the obstacle to living a moral life. When push comes to shove, we care more about ourselves than about others. But so it's always a struggle to put one's own self, which one just happens to be, right, in perspective and in the widest perspective possible. And and that's Spinoza's idea of making moral progress.
The thing that always gets me is where I draw the line on moral culpability of people, because I use that mistrust or disbelief in free will to try to have a compassionate view of why people do the things they do or believe the things they believe.
Yes.
And it's useful because it kind of helps me come to terms with things that I don't like in other people.
Yeah.
If I were to be a purist about it, I would say that almost nobody is culpable for anything they do.
Yeah.
But we can't live in a society like that, can we?
We can't.
And I also can't treat my life like that either. I can't act as though I don't have free will. And so in a way, I have to live with this illusion, not just for myself, but what I project onto others.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. At some level, I mean, you can decide on what you want to want. And that's a very attenuated notion of freedom, and it's probably determined as well. But I don't know, have you ever felt like in your life, when you've wanted to change or something, you said, I don't want to be this kind of person. I understand why I am this kind of person, but I want to think about it. I want to think about the various people I've known and who I admire, and I'm going to break in to the flow of my life and change it's kind of like second order desires, deciding what I'm going to want for the rest of my life. And maybe there is some freedom there, because I remember when I decided, I see where this is going. I see the script. I don't want it for me.
Which aspect specifically?
Well, the religious life,
Okay, right.
this very, and women were treated very differently from men. I wanted to study. I wanted to study anything I wanted to study. I wanted to understand things. I didn't want to be blindly obedient. I just didn't want to be that kind of person, and who was meek and obedient, and whose life would be determined by her having happened to have been born into this group and into this sex, and so it felt like a struggle, way back and forth, but it felt like I was exercising free will or some kind of freedom. Some maybe free will is too strong, but something.
Well, the operative words there, it felt like.
It felt like, you're right, yes. And there's probably something about my neuroscience that determined it all, why I didn't want to be a good little girl, right? But you're right. I didn't have access to that. Oh, yeah, the neurons are firing this way instead of going that way.
Was it a struggle between your family and you? How has that transpired over the course of your life since your switch to an atheist viewpoint?
Yes. Well, actually, one of the things I did was, and this is actually, I can blame Spinoza about this too, because he stayed within his community until his parents died. I thought, oh, well, I'll do that too. But it's unfortunately for him, and his parents died quite young. My mom lived to a nice, ripe old age. And
you were stuck in the community.
I was stuck in the community. Well, you see, that was another name, made a vow to myself that I would do this when I was just a child, or a little more than a child, in high school. Well, vows are something that I was trained to take very, very seriously. I had, even though it was a vow to myself. And so, yes, I more or less kept it, kept that vow. It was very inconvenient. And it was like, can I speak freely about what I believe, So I would not advise doing what I did.
Which bit, having an Orthodox family, or?
No, making a vow that you will not hurt their feelings or shame them, because, there's great shame. Like one of the worst punishments, and that was the punishment that Spinoza was subjected to, is separation from the community. It's you're an outcast. You can't be part of the community. And that's a kind of death for many Jewish people. I mean, of course, I didn't feel it because I didn't like it. I felt suffocated by the community. And I had another community, I had the academic community, to go to. But yes, it really is, community is terribly important. So,
the academic community doesn't have Shiva, does it?
No. No.
So they guys all jump on a Zoom call together. I guess that'd be similar.
Yeah, it's just part of the fabric of life in a Jewish community. And that, there are times when I've missed that.
Let me round out with a couple of questions, if you will.
Yeah.
I do believe that you've learnt a lot of really important lessons over your life. Is there one that, if you were to have learnt it at a younger age, would have changed the trajectory of your life?
I think I've overvalued intelligence in my life. The people I've admired have been the extremely smart people, no matter what else about them. I'm wowed by it. I'm wowed by powerful thinking. And I've often made decisions of my own in terms of how smart would I have to be to do this thing, as opposed to, is this a thing I want to do? Is this a thing that would add the most value to the world? Or is this the thing I really want to do? Is this the thing that is going to make life maximally pleasurable for me? And often, this is terribly honest, and I can't believe I'm actually saying
I'm
this.
appreciating the candor, but go on. Yeah.
It's like, well, no, I'll choose the thing that, most people couldn't do this, right? And certainly it's a thing that people think women can't do. That's been a very big thing in my life. I've so resented that, to be hampered by having been born a woman. And so, this is something that people think women can't do. Go, I'm going to do it because I could do it. Is it going to make me happy? Didn't really think about that. And that's what I would tell my younger self. If I could tell my younger self something, it would be, you don't have to prove that you're smart. Would it have changed my life? It might have changed the way I feel. And I think it would have actually, I think I would have made friendships, different kinds of friendships.
That's an interesting comment. Who do you think you might have been friends with? Not specifically, but what types of people do you think you would have been more likely to hang around with if not for this?
Frivolous. I need more frivolous people in my life. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. The joyfulness, the living in the moment.
Okay, well, you got me now, so you're fine. Yes.
Well, hooray.
I'll tick that box for you. Okay, my final question for you.
Can't believe I've said all that. But you caught me about something I never thought about, so I've just tried to think it out with you.
That's all right. It's a great place to think anyone out. If you could know the last meal choice of anyone on Earth right now, who would that be?
Oh, do they have to be on Earth, not have died? I do know actually Spinoza's last meal. Isn't that funny?
The one that he had or the one that he wanted?
The one he had. It was chicken soup. His doctor told him to have chicken soup, an old hen, and had the landlady cook it for him.
Yeah.
But I think I would like to know, like, some great chef, like Escoffier. What do you know? What did he have?
I don't know what Escoffier had.
Yes.
No.
I know what Julia Child had.
Oh, what was that?
French onion soup.
Really?
Yes.
She makes a good French onion.
She
I've
makes,
done
her
French onion soup,
recipe is,
Yeah.
yes.
Thank you so much for being a guest on Last Meal. It was a pleasure to have you.
Well, thank you for asking me your wonderful questions.
And I
Yes,
hope you can
I've
have
been
some food.
eyeing these strawberries.
We'll get you a fork and a glass of wine.
Okay, thank you. Yes, those strawberries look really peak.
It takes a thoughtful mind and a healthy candor to completely reflect on one's life and decisions in an honest and open manner. Rebecca seems to have this in spades, and I hope one day to be able to see my own path for what it's truly been. And that's all from me.